Hello YouTube audience. Today is May the 30th, 2022. Um, so today I'm going to work on my rosemary. So this is a rosemary from Fred Meyer, which is very common. You can get it anywhere, and this was from a plant that had about 4 trees in it, and this is the 2 trees I cannot separate from each other, so I plant it as a group here. So it just flowered. You can see some purple flowers near the top of the tree, and so now it's a perfect time to prune. And also the leaves are a little bit yellowish for the plant, so it may lack some nutrition, so I'm going to give it some fertilizer after I prune it. And there are also some guy wire that's put on. I think it's time to release the plant from the guide wires. There are some more wires on the trunk. It hasn't cut in yet, so I think I can leave it for a little bit. So it's a multi-trunk tree, although really it's 2 plants. It's just the roots are fused together too much, and I could not separate them safely, so I leave them as a multi-trunk. So there seems to be a lot of pruning that I can do. So this one I could start from the top. Obviously on the top it has a lot of strength. And there are also some dead branches on the top, so I can reduce that first. Ooh, yeah, it's tough wood. So I will need to use a more powerful pruner. I use this concave pruner. It's not because I want to have a smooth trunk, but more because it's powerful. It's powerful. There's this big top that I don't really want to keep all of it, so I'm going to prune the top off to give it some taper. Rosemary are very tough wood. It smells really good. a good time to prune a rosemary is before a barbecue. And you can have a lot of rosemary for marination. So I'm pruning it a little bit early, but I think it's okay. Okay, now there is a small branch from the front that could be the new continuation of the trunk line or the new leader. So I'm going to leave this one to grow and prune off the rest of the branches to some greens. So this is also a strong branch, and I can prune it short. Branch are a little bit yellowish, but I think with some fertilizer I can bring it back to good condition. And you may not be able to see it, but there are some branches, multiple branches coming out from one place that I'm going to reduce one of them. Anytime you see 3 branches come out from one place, just reduce one of it. And this is what I'm doing here. Normally I just cut off the ones that are not growing from the direction I like. Or the ones that are parallel to each other. When you have a parallel branch, the upper branch would block the light from the lower branch, so it's not so it's going to be inefficient. So this branch is a bit long. I'm going to reduce it to the central branch, to shorten the branch. Rosemary are too tough, very tough to wire, so I don't normally wire rosemaries. Then I'm just going to reduce these tips so that it doesn't grow long anymore. It's a back branch. I want it to develop some density. I don't want it to grow too long. Yeah, the strong upward growing branch I'm going to reduce. So the branch was here, and I just reduced the top so that it grows more horizontally. And there is a branch that's growing on the other direction. It's growing very, I think this branch is the branch that I'm going to reduce because it's growing back into the tree. and then I can keep this branch. So I'm going from the main trunk and I'm going downward, and see. So now the top is dealt with. I'm going to continue to go downward to sort out each branch. The upward growing branch going to reduce. There is a tiny branch here that's probably dead, so I'm going to reduce that. This upward growing branch I don't need, it's growing into the tree. This tip is a little bit too strong. Can reduce that. The rest of it, I think it's okay. It's okay. Just going to reduce this one. Okay, now this main trunk, I only have several lower branch left that I need to deal with. I'm going to deal with this second lowest branch first. There's a dead stump here that I can cut it back. I'm dealing with this branch. From the front, it's a second lowest branch on the main trunk on the left side. So this inward growing branch I don't need. This side branch I can shorten. There are 2 branches growing, 3 branch extending from the same place. I'm going to reduce one of it to distribute the foliage. So I have a branch come from one side of this main branch, and the next one I want to go from the other side. So I'm balancing it. Then at somewhere I would prune off a strong upward growing branch. And to allow the shoots to grow more horizontal, going to prune off this leading shoot. The side branches, I'm going to prune it short, and I'm going to leave one leading branch to grow. Now I'm going to deal with the lowest branch on the main trunk, or we could call it the lowest trunk, because this almost looked like a multi-trunk tree. There's a dead bit in the center that I can reduce immediately. I don't need the branch to come out from very low, so I'm going to reduce that. And from the back side it's good, but I'm just going to cut it short to create movement. So I'm going to follow this trunk line. So rosemary is a plant that has opposite leaf pattern. So almost everywhere you see there are two branches coming out from the trunk on the same location. So I always need to make the choice of which one I would keep, which one I'm going to get rid of. So I'm going to shorten all the very, very strong branches. I'm going to shorten. So there are two branches come out of this place. I'm going to keep one of them. And shorten the other one. And the central stem I'm going to get rid of and let the lower one grow. The lower one will become my new leader that continues the trunk line. So this thing basically is miniaturized. Okay, the first round of the main trunk it's dealt with. Now the second trunk. Obviously there are some eye-poking branch coming out from the lower part that I'm going to reduce. So this one I'm going to go from the bottom to the top. So the inside branch I have shortened, and the outside Still have one more branch. Which I'm going to reduce the top of it. There is that branch in front. There is this branch that's growing too congested. I'm going to reduce. In fact, the whole thing is blocking the trunk line, so I'm going to reduce the whole thing back. Just leave a tiny one from the front. The top growth is a little bit too strong. I'm going to reduce it. And I'm going to leave this to grow. So I think the first time I styled this tree, I cut off too much branches from the back, and the tricky thing of rosemary, it doesn't bud back very well. So if I cut off a wrong branch, that would take time to recover it. So now I'm dealing with the next branch, but on the back. So it's a back branch. There are very strong top growth that I can reduce. This is too strong. I cannot reduce just with a scissor. So a back branch is very important. But we also don't want it to compete with the branch in the front. So I'm going to reduce, shorten. There is this clump of strange weak growth. I'm going to shorten it to a nice, strong growth. It's a clump of growth that's strangely clustered and weak. So I'm going to reduce this back a little bit. So I'm going to get rid of some of the strong and straight tops to favor the movement. So now I have a top that has more movement. The same thing with this. This place is very strong and very thick. If I just use a side branch to replace the top, then it's going to reduce that strength and create more movements. And the top, I'm going to choose one of them as the top. The other one, the one with the flower, I'm going to reduce so that it becomes a side branch. The top, I'm going to leave it to grow. Now the plant is pretty much clean, and there is some remnants of wires that I can get rid of. We don't need these wires anymore. The wires are not biting in yet, but I think it has stayed there for long enough that we can take off, understanding that it has set the tree there. I think these wires are there not to really bend the tree, but to make it more upright, because this main trunk is kind of tilted to one side. And now it has done its job, and we can take this off now. And I'm being very careful when I unwired, trying to support the wire without just letting the wire exert force on the branches, because the branches are, the trunk of a rosemary is very brittle, and I don't want it to break the branches or break the trunk even. Okay. Now there's no wire on the tree, and it's holding up its shape pretty well. So that's good. That's very good. I want to prune one more branch here. And now I would need to give the tree some fertilizer. I think rosemary would be fine with anything. So I just have these old fertilizer bags laying around. It's just a tea bag. And I'm going to load some new fertilizers in. These tea bags has pretty good quality, so it can be reused. Just need to find a spoon. And just load some fertilizers into the tea bag. Going to pin it down into the soil. And one in the front and one in the back. Have just giving it about half a spoon of fertilizers. Just put on the surface of the soil and pin it down. Put the pin in and pin it down. And that should do it. And one more thing I need to address is there's some moss growing up the trunk of the tree that I just need to brush them a little bit. Try to reduce it a little bit. Because moss could rot the trunk, and it's not a very good thing for moss to grow up the trunk of the tree. So I'm just going to use an old toothbrush, brush it off a little bit. So that it's not going to rot the trunk too much. toothbrush are pretty soft, so it should not damage the bark. The main thing is the moss on the bark. They are keeping the bark too moist, so it may rot it. But if I just brush them off once in a while, that should solve the problem. You can also use half vinegar and half water solution and just dip the toothbrush on it for a little bit, and then when you brush it, it's going to kill the moss. But if you just brush it like what I'm doing right now, you can just physically remove the moss. The vinegar would chemically kill them. So what you do would be up to your preference. But to begin with, I'm just going to physically remove this extra moss. And that should do it. That should do it. Okay, let's do a 360. And so this is the front of the tree. This is the back. Side view. And we're back to the front. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you next time. Goodbye.